Do you guys remember that old crossover animated OVA that came out back in like 2013? At that time, all the big three stands of all the big three animes like Dragon Ball and all these other animes were going crazy. The fourth Great Ninja War was starting and Madara was smoking all of the mid-ninja alliance. The Battle of Gods was cooking and we got introduced to Beerus and Whis, and Bleach fans were, Bleach fans were kind of in a deficit at that time. Despite all of that, everyone who has been fans of these series have always wanted a crossover of all of these animes in one sitting. We didn't know how or where, but everyone wanted to see either a miniseries, a movie, a manga, anything to see our favorite characters like Naruto, Goku, Ichigo, and Luffy share the screen or a panel together. However, surprisingly, we did. Kind of. Not many people know about it because I didn't even know about it until about a year later after its release. A martial arts tournament was happening and of course Goku's fighting hungry butt needed to get in the mix. And we were about to see some of our all favorite anime fighters about to go in a crazy hand-to-hand battle. Son Goku, Monkey D. Luffy, and last but not least, of course, the hero of Konoha, the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, Naru... Who the hell is this blue-haired fuck? I had zero idea who this man was, but the special gave me this mysterious man's name, Toriko. I never grew up watching him, I never even heard about him up to that point. I never saw his manga in stores, I never see any AMVs of him having the most epic fights behind Skrillex's Bangarang or Linkin Park's In the End. So of course when I first saw this crossover, my very first question is, how is this dude standing next to two of the most iconic shonen protagonists of all time like he paid rent to be there? Well, little did I know, in that brief moment, that single cameo was the tiniest window into a manga that was, for a short moment, one of the most hype and most creative and most downright bonkers stories that Jump has ever created and completed. And yet, no one's talking about it. Even today, if you bring up Toriko in a random room full of anime fans, 60% of them will probably say, wait, isn't that some kind of random food anime? Or 30% will probably say they know him from J-Star's Combat Versus, and the remaining 10% will probably be the secretly most dedicated fans of the series. I might be the main ones who remember how peak time skip Toriko was, as it was like some kind of religious awakening. Toriko takes place in a world where food isn't just food. It's literally the very core of their society. Every animal, every plant, every cliff, every weather phenomena, every god is considered to be edible. Not only that, every character gains a massive benefit from eating delicious foods because it fuels something called gourmet cells within their bodies. The more delicious foods you eat, the stronger you become. As much as this world has normal people, it really isn't built for them. It is built for people known as gourmet hunters, these walking mountains of muscles who venture into wilderness to hunt creatures so dangerous that they could consume entire nations in other shonen series just because of their size alone. If the title didn't tell you enough, Toriko is the MC of this series, a legendary gourmet hunter in this series' world. And he runs around his world with his main weapons being his knife and fork hands. Like literally, he runs around and throws around energy-based beings and projectiles that seem to look like forks and knives, and he just calls them knife and fork. Imagine you decide to fight a man who's almost as big or even bigger than someone like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, decides to just throw his hand forward and you don't see anything, but you get pierced in like 4 places in your body that looks coincidentally where 4 prongs of a fork would be, and you don't even know where it came from. Not only that, each move can come from almost any part of his body, but he mainly uses them from his arms and feet. There's leg knife and arm knife and a leg fork and arm knife and arm fork and arm knife. It's a massive combination of knives and forks. For Toriko, a 2-piece combo no biscuit quite literally has a much more different comparison to us compared to him with his abilities. But one of my favorite techniques he has is something known as his cookie punch or his nail punch. In essence, he punches you, pulls his fist back, and by his basic explanation, he strikes you again as quickly as he did before. However, that doesn't make any sense because what basically means means is that when he punches you once, you get punched whether 5 more times, 6 more times, or 7 more times, no matter what position you are in, except he will stand in the same place. Basically, he is gaslighting reality and telling reality that he's still punching you even though he's already punched you once. Gourmet hunters are so absolutely absurd that even the very concept of hunger can manifest in a form of a monster or a demon. And as later on in the series, if he were to enhance his gourmet cells, meaning if he eats more delicious foods and the gourmet cells mutate, he can actually awaken something known as an appetite demon, an entity that represents hunger itself somehow. I could yap a long time about the power system of Toriko and how cool it is a lot of other characters can do a lot of weird things with gourmet cells, but let's actually talk deeply about the actual motivation that Toriko has. At the very core of all of the madness of this story, Toriko's ultimate goal is really simple, is to create his full course meal, and that is a goal for a lot of other gourmet hunters. It's not just a list of your favorite foods, but it's basically a list of the life-defining menu made of the rarest, most dangerous, most meaningful ingredients that exist in the entire world. For each item on his full course meal, it represents a moment, a battle, a lesson learned in the hard way, an epic battle, an epic showdown between other characters that might be going up against Toriko. This isn't really about gluttony, or it's not a gluttonous thing, because Toriko has an ultimate love for the actual animals or creatures or ingredients that he goes for. He actually really loves the world itself, to the point that he actually takes good care of it even in the pursuit of his own full course meal. And like a lot of other gourmet hunters, they have a similar goal, but some of them hunt for their own personal reasons as well. Some of them just want to have ultimate power. Some of them want to do it for scientific discovery. Some just want to eat the most dangerous thing alive and flex it for themselves that they are the strongest gourmet hunter out there. At the very essence, gourmet hunters are explorers, mercenaries, conservationists, criminals, and lunatics all rolled up into one profession. There's no real cookie cutter way of explaining what a gourmet hunter is. But of course, obviously, with Toriko having these goals, he has to have an antagonist. One of the main antagonists in the entirety of this series is known as the Gourmet Corps. Now, in the manga, some of the members are actually called Bishokukai, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, I'm trying my unholy best, but basically a lot of those members are marked as that, but it's just basically the Japanese explanation of what Gourmet Corps means. And in the Gourmet Corps, their ultimate goal eventually is to control all of the world's ingredients and establish an gourmet empire and collect one of the most biggest and most crucial and most greatest ingredient to exist in the world, known as God. I like where your head's at, but not that God. Not that God either. But I am very concerned about your decision of assuming that was the actual God I was thinking about. Yep, that's it right there. That's right, God in this world is a massive frog. Basically, it is an amazing divine ingredient discovered by the legendary gourmet hunter known as Acadia 500 years ago. And supposedly God is supposed to be considered one of the greatest dishes in the world and at the pinnacle of all ingredients. And its flavor is supposed to be so great that it is even capable of putting an end to the 100-year gourmet war after the leaders of each country were enlightened by its flavor. Granted, that is only an assumption, because it's not very certain if it would actually bring peace to the world. It is assumed that its first appearance actually brought peace to the world, but I think if it brought forth another appearance, a second appearance, it will actually bring forth another war. Basically, you're brought into Toriko's story because he's revealed to be someone who wants to understand the world that he lives in, while his enemies want to simply empty it and have an ultimate monopoly and control over everything that is delicious and pure. But zooming out of the characters, the really cool characters, I actually want to talk about a little bit about the world building. The world building in Toriko feels very unique to me because everything literally surrounds the very concept of how food is made and how animals exist and how they are actually turned into these delicious foods in the first place. Some of these places are so cool that people in the millions drive to even one location. That one location being known as the Cooking Island, also known as the Chef's Holy Land. That's one thing I didn't really mention, but chefs are considered a very vital resource or a essential worker in this universe. And this island basically carries an average annual number of visitors to being around 100 million people per day. But not only that, there is a festival that happens on this island every few years, and it is considered the Cooking Festival. And this festival gathers around a multitude of 1 billion people in one sitting, in one period of time. And that's a crazy amount of people, given that the actual default number of people, the population in the entire world, is 31.2 billion. If you thought overpopulation was a problem in our real world, this is literally on steroids. Like, there is way too many people existing in this universe. But I believe there's so many creative places that exist in this universe where they actually contain a lot of these important ingredients. One of my favorite places to think of is like the Ice Hell. It's a southern continent in the human world that is known for its extraordinarily cold weather, and it is filled with raging winds that feel like they have a mind of their own and ferocious beasts of notable strength. Not only that, they have, the tiny adorable penguins that even got attached to one of our main characters known as Kodomatsu. It's interesting to me because the place looks completely barren. You can barely see very far in the actual same place. And not only that, they have like massive towers of ice-like pillars that just surround the entire area. And the only way for you to actually traverse this area is that you have to have a very special like wetsuit to actually get through and resist the cold. But even if you do so, the cold is still so strong that you literally have to be very careful traveling in this area. There's another cool place known as Death Falls, or also known as Executioner's Falls. Because it's known as that because it kills almost anything that tries to enter it, like a guillotine. Because the waterfalls are so powerful because the water pours down at a rate of like 1 trillion liters per minute. And the waterfall itself is like 1 kilometer wide. Basically, getting through this place is so egregiously hard that no matter how much physical strength that you may have, no matter how much firepower you think you have, you will not be able to actually get through the waterfall with just pure force alone. And it's such a weird and great juxtaposition of the actual area because the area looks very beautiful and majestic from the outside view, with all the mountains in the backgrounds and the colorful skies, and the actual scene of the waterfall looks amazing, but it also almost looks otherworldly as well. There are so many other cool places that exist in this story, like the land of the BB corn, where you have corn that are thousands of feet taller than the actual characters themselves. Or the land where you have to pick up an ingredient known as a rainbow fruit, which is a legendary fruit known to be rumored to be extinct. But in the land where it exists, where you can actually find it, it is surrounded by so many creatures known as like troll kongs, and they're surrounded by multiple traps from the biological fruit itself and the actual enemies you have to face against. There are so many things good about this series that I could yap about for a long time. I love the power system, I love the characters, I love the side characters you have to introduce later on. I love the actual world building, the different ingredients you find. I even love the fact that it goes in so much detail for some of the ingredients that you try to select, because you go through different animals and different creatures to figure out what Toriko actually wants on his main course, because he looks and tries and see if that's what he actually wants to have on it. I still find it hilarious that one part of the arc is that he can't just brute force every foe that he goes against, because a lot of the capture levels or capture creatures that he has to deal with are like big behemoth creatures, but the pufferfish, it may be a lower capture level, but it is still one of the most dangerous animals that exist, and it explains in detail how he actually excretes very specific parts of the pufferfish in order for it to actually be viable for eating, to the point that he does a trial and error by killing almost 100,000 different pufferfish in this one arc with Kotatsu and another side character. There's so much greatness in Toriko, and at its peak it almost seemed unstoppable. So I very much had to ask the question, why in 2026, but even back in 2025 or even 2024, why was no one really ever mentioning Toriko like that? Well, I thought about it, and from a storytelling perspective, even though I haven't fully finished it, but I'm actually starting to get the feelings as I go through, Toriko suffered from an unchecked escalation problem like a lot of other shonens go through. Early arcs seemed very tightly focused, a goal, a location, a creature, a consequence. Something felt a lot more contained and actually easier to follow. But as the series went on, the narrative started to get stacked with concepts faster than we can resolve them. Power scaling started to get really high, like like it's the same Dragon Ball problem. Capture levels for creatures started to really mean nothing, and I didn't really explain it before, but capture levels are basically how strong a creature is. The higher the capture level, the more dangerous and powerful the creature may be. And a lot of techniques often felt legendary became routine and a little bit too easy to execute. Even when there seemed to be like a somewhat apocalyptic scenario, everything didn't really seem that urgent. But then granted, it is a very shonen story, so I didn't really take it to heart. I think to a degree, the gourmet world when Toriko stepped foot in there should have been Toriko's new world moment. A long, dangerous second half of the story where it tested the character's patience and awarded when they actually followed through on that patience. Instead, it became like a really fast moving story. It's very hard to actually slow things down. Locations that seem to deserve entire arcs kind of seem to be brushed off. I won't really talk about those because in case you want to read the story for yourself, I'll leave out any possible spoilers. And a lot of legendary creatures appeared to not seem to be as impressive as I thought they would be. And emotional beats didn't really hit as hard compared to like in the beginning. But yet again, I still haven't finished it, so that opinion of myself could change later on. But as I did research into the series and the creator of the story, I started to understand why there might be not nearly as a heavy influence on the story. The author of Toriko is Mitsutoshi Shimabukuro. While Toriko was airing and still releasing chapters, a past conviction of the creator came to light. The creator of Toriko was convicted in the past for soliciting and you can fill in the blank for that. You all know exactly what I am talking about when I mention that. From what I understand, the conviction was before he ever released Toriko, and it was public, documented, and it was a very serious thing. However, he did serve time for it, and he lost his career when he was originally working for Jump before. But Jump decided to bring him back, and Toriko was supposed to be his second chance back in the sphere of anime or manga creation. And of course, for people who probably found out about it the first time around, audiences were never really happy about that. Even years later, as Toriko was airing and publishing, the controversy apparently remained in the public eye, but it was kind of like an unspoken barrier. It didn't dominate headlines, but it influenced decisions behind the scenes and reactions in the fandom. Toriko was never really allowed to become a symbol of Jump the way that One Piece and Naruto was. Its visibility was very much controlled and restrained, and its marketing was held back a lot more. And one of the major things was that its anime, when it was released, it became very sanitized and very quickly ended as well. And of course, when a lot of people in the West started to learn about his conviction, often years after discovering the series, it retroactively damaged the enthusiasm to continue the story, which is rightfully so. A lot of people started dropping the manga, and of course, a lot of videos started dropping about discussing the conviction, and of course, giving recommendations to go and find other stories that might be better and less controversial, like the story of Food Wars. And of course, naturally, you can't build a long-term cultural momentum when a creator's name realistically can trigger a lot of discomfort. I understand the feeling of that because I am a big fan of the series known as Rurouni Kenshin. That is one of my all-time favorite stories when growing up because one of the first animes I ever watched, and realistically one of the first mangas I decided to ever actually want to read. And of course, when I was younger, I didn't know anything about the author or anything about that until I grew older. And when I learned about the backstory of the creator and what he did, I grew very uncomfortable really loving this series, and it was very hard for me to deal with. And I actually want to pass this question to you guys, because I still love Rurouni Kenshin. But as far as I'm concerned, in my mind, the author doesn't exist. As far as I'm concerned, Rurouni Kenshin was created by a shadow figure, and I will never know their name. So anytime someone asks me, it's like, oh, do you condone the author's decisions? I would usually say, I don't know who you're talking about. And to clarify, I am not saying that I'm trying to ignore the man and ignore what he did. I'm simply saying I do not recognize him as a human being. He does not exist to me as a human being. That's to clarify. So the question I want to pose, how do you guys deal with the separation of the artist and the art? Because I know that still even works in nowadays, because there's people right now who probably still listen to R. Kelly's music despite the heinous things he's done. Or even people still listen to music from Chris Brown or Cardi B, who has even admitted to the crimes that she's committed in the past and how bad some of them were. Because even with Toriko, over time as you progress, you get this slight feeling that he was put on a deadline. a deadline that he needed to reach to very quickly to just even appease a fraction of the people who was giving him this second chance. Because when it comes to a lot of long-running shonen that get a lot of renaissances or appraisals, you get a "you had to be there" moment kind of thing. But Toriko never really had that from what I can see from the public view. Not because it didn't deserve a discussion, but it seemed like discussing it required acknowledging something that many fans do not want to reconcile. Enjoying the work means confronting what the creator did or trying to separate it entirely from the art itself. And for many people, that's a line that they just weren't willing to cross, which is completely understandable. Toriko is a story right now that I'm reading that, even though it has its controversial past, there is value remaining remembering Toriko, honestly. Not a forgotten masterpiece or a cancelled cautionary tale, but as a reminder that creativity and consequence can often coexist. That world building can be breathtaking even when the foundation beneath of it is flawed. And that sometimes a story's legacy isn't defined by how high it climbed, but what it couldn't escape. Toriko is a feast worth studying, not just how good it tasted, but for the aftertaste it left behind. Then that's it for the video, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the topic I talked about today. Let me know in the comments if there's any other animes or mangas or series that you feel like I can do a video on just like this. Whether you think they're too popular, not as popular, something you feels like deserves a little bit more recognition, even if it's a very controversial story. So I don't mind it. I don't mind talking about the story as a story itself. And again, I'm actually curious about you guys, how you feel about separating the artist and the art form. Do you think that's something that people should be able to strive for, something that people should hold back? How do you feel about that concept? Other than that, I hope you guys leave a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I would love to do a lot more videos like this, and I got a lot more videos coming next week, especially a brand new fictional economics. Also, I want to say shout out to everyone who subscribed in the last few days because we reached 1.5k subscribers. I am thankful for every last one of you, because I am surprised that Stranger Things video actually did really well, because I was just kind of talking about how I felt and the very brief changes I would make. I was a bit specific, but not as specific as I wanted to be. But either way, I'm very glad that you guys enjoyed that video as well. Don't forget to check out my other rewrite videos as well. I did one with the CW Flash. I did one talking about Tai Lung and Kung Fu Panda 4. I did one talking about Dragon Ball in terms of the story of the Super Saiyan, or the legend of the Super Saiyan. I did a lot of creative stuff there. So don't forget to check those videos out as well. Other than that, I think that's everything we gotta do for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's your boy Kadukun, and peace.
FMA, handle business, don't play. On point when it comes to the anime. Jack and Daxter, ayy, let's go. The ultimate heroes, don't stop, we on the road. Kadukun.
Yeah, welcome to the channel.